Hi, I so hate this. Hi, everyone. It's Maree here from the Quarantine Diaries, looking like a stunned mullet for the first 20 seconds of a video. I, they've got Facebook have updated their video format, and I don't like it. I don't like it. I like the old one. And I couldn't get the old one working for love nor money. And it's every time I try and do it, it's more of a challenge. And this week, but it seems like it's working. Well, you're saying good morning, so it must be. So here I am, Quarantine Diaries. Today is, I can't even tell you because I can't even see me title anymore now because I've gone and taken that away. And I'm straight, and my comments have moved from one side to the other. It's all a bit much, people. It's all a bit much. Today is the Quarantine Diaries, day 39, 3rd of May. There we go. It's Sunday. I very nearly took the day off today. I suddenly thought, will they forgive me if I have a day off? I've worked 39 days straight, and yeah, I'm starting to sort of get a bit like this. But that's all right. I did actually have something prepared for today. So I thought, no, I'll do it because I've got something prepared. And I've even got a recipe. I know, it's been far too long. So I thought I would do a recipe. I'm a coffee. I've got water for when I start coughing and hacking. I don't know about anybody else out there, but it is incredibly unseasonably warm here in Hawke's Bay at the moment, like incredibly unseasonably warm. And we've got that whole fern effect nor'westerly wind thing going on. And so if you watched yesterday, I sort of kind of got all croaky in the middle of it with Ethan. I had no water, and I've got the most dreadful hay fever. It's driving me absolutely bonkers. So if I start coughing and hacking and sneezing in the middle of all of this, I'm very, very sorry. Anywho, I have got stuff prepared. So, and I've got props left, right, and centre. I've raided my stash beside the chair to go and show you stuff. And yes, I've got new things to show you. So how amazing is that, right? I keep looking down here and I need to be looking up here. I'm not used to this new format. I'm struggling. Right. Okay. Rambler. I know that this is getting a bit dull because I'm on to sort of really long dull part. But as you can see, if this were to be a sweater, I'm actually at that point where it would be finished because as you can see, the length of the body is pretty much at the length of the arms. But I'm not doing a sweater. I have decided to do a tunic. So because I'm doing a tunic, I'm adding extra to the bottom. So that's where I'm at the moment. I popped that on this morning against this tunic that I've got on today. This is a tunic, well, this is a dress actually, but I'm not going to have it as flared as this. But I like the length of this dress, and it's also the same length as a black merino tunic that I have. So at this, I've got this much left on my second to last ball. I've got one ball left. I need to probably do about another which is what, 25 centimeters. And then I will start considering what I'm going to, well, I do know how I'm going to finish it off at the bottom. To be brutally honest, because of the level of increasing that I'm doing either side, I'm probably going to need one more ball, that's okay. So that to 6 balls of Southlander Sport. I had 5. But that's all right. It's easy knitting, like such easy knitting, and I'm binge watching some telly, and I've actually promising Deborah at Outlaw with Ethan. They her and her husband Milk are Kiwifying our wee Canadian, and they've been binge watching Outrageous Fortune. And I actually had to admit to Deborah yesterday that I have never seen an episode of Outrageous Fortune. I know. I can't believe it. Well, I don't know why that is the case, because when Outrageous Fortune first started all those years ago was before the days of on-demand TV and all that really good stuff. And I used to work, and I've always worked a lot, and I was working when that was on. So, and I wasn't very organised, and I never taped it, and it was just one of those things. I just never got there and did it. So I have to say, and I've had it sitting on my queue in one of my streaming platforms for the longest time. So I think, yeah, once I'm finished with what I'm doing, I'm actually thinking I'm going to have to dive into Outrageous Fortune. And with the cast that is in there, which is, some of New Zealand's finest, I can't, yeah, I'm a bit ashamed. It's very un-Kiwi of me that I have not been there before. So that is where I'm at. So my Rambler and I will become very great friends with that. The other thing I mentioned to you guys too that I was doing, I've been talking about my next project, which is and I need to find where I've gone and put that prop, is the as she's looking around, and I know it's here somewhere. Goldwing by Jennifer Steingass is what I'm going to do for there it is my next project. So there's the pattern there. And I've decided to do it in, and I know I've got, where have I gone and put that? Oh, there it is, hiding behind me. It's because I've got a ball of this county rainbow, which I've had for ages. Now, to be fair, this is actually written at a 20 stitch tension. So if you're wanting to knit this, and I've actually given out a bit of advice on this since I've said that I was going to do that as my next project over the last little bit. And this is perfect for Southlander. So the one even on the cover, if you wanted to emulate that one of the cover, Southlander goldenrod was into oatmeal, or bracken if you wanted a little bit deeper at the top, but I think oatmeal would be perfect, or cream if you wanted to go really contrasty and white, would be incredible. The other yarn to consider in there as well is Bandit Curiosity, which is also very like oatmeal, but that's another good one to consider too. So if you wanted to do DK weight, I think that absolutely Southlander DK, perfect. For me, I am actually, there we go. I am actually going to do it in Southlander Sport. And there's two reasons for that. One is because I want to use Makani, and that's exactly the same weight as the Southlander Sport is spun to. But also, too, I live in Hawke's Bay. So for me, because temperatures here are just that much warmer than a lot of other places around New Zealand, I just find weight cardigan vastly more appealing and easier to wear than something that is in a heavier DK weight, and I just know I'll get more wear from it and I'll be able to wear it more across the fringes. So that's what I'm going to do. And I showed you the other day how I'm playing around with that count, and I am pretty much I'm going to need that whole ball for what I'm going to do. And I've just been playing around doing some little, and I'm just going to have to do that because someone's messaged me and it pops up in the middle. I had just been playing and just doing a whole bunch of Aranami modular stuff just to see what it knit something one afternoon. And I unraveled it, and you saw it was all bobbly because I mean I knit that months and months ago, and here it is being I have just soaked that and re-established that back to its normal cowniness. So I will, and actually now that I've gone and done that, as you can see, I've got that amount there. I may divide out from this front half of the ball, wind off some of the red until I get to the orange that matches this portion, and then actually wind back together. So I've got equal amounts, probably about 20 grams of each, and actually save those for sleeves. So then that way I have matching graduation down my sleeves. Not that I am being neurotic about this, but you know, I think Ethan was quietly proud because he is incredibly precise. Me not so much. I do drive him crazy because he will look at me sometimes and go, "Why are you doing that again?" Because I'm lazy. Whereas Ethan would never be caught dead doing anything like that. He is so exacting. But that is what, now that I've got this like this, it just makes perfect sense to do so. If any of you are wondering or panicking, thinking, oh Christ, you know, how are you going to get this reconnected with that? This is the beautiful thing about these rustic yarns that are a little bit like Velcro. Doing a basic sort of splice spit join is the easiest thing in the world, and they're completely visible. So for me, it's going to be, and I think I've made the decision now, I'm definitely using the County. I was tossing up and going that way with the Southlander charcoal. But the more I think about it, I am actually going to go with Southlander oatmeal and actually make this the star of the show. So I'm going to have the graduation of the rainbow up the top, and then the lighter colour sort of just disappearing away from the body, which I think I'm actually looking forward to it. I've never actually done anything like that before, but it's a really fun way to use these county yarns. They, if you actually ever have a chance to, I mean, I shouldn't be going on about this because, I mean, obviously we don't sell them, but I do. If you ever have a look, there are some really beautiful projects where you've used those long colour gradients, and if you can get your hands on one of these, I just think that they're a load of fun. I bought mine from Nanette from Yarns at Mid August Nights, and it is a really super fun yarn to play around with. But that wasn't my topic of discussion for today. So we've seen Goldwyn, Jennifer Steingas is where we're at. And in case you were wondering, yes, I am going to make modifications in terms of the gauge. I haven't, well, I don't need to swatch it because I'm going to use the swatching that I've obviously done with the Rambler because it's worked on the same size needle. At this stage, it looks like there's a 10% differential, not even quite that, I think it was 8%. So I am just going to check the positive ease. I'm not even, I'm just going to move my needle size down that sort of half a graduation, and then I'll may move up a size. I'm still in, I decide. But I want to get Rambler finished first before I move on to that. Right. Okay. What I'm going to talk about today. I thought today, I mentioned this actually in a video a few weeks back, that I might do this. And I am going to do this because I've had a couple of questions. Just our inquiries online have been huge. So just in case you're wondering how this is working, we get a lot of inquiries, we always have, and we've got two ways you can send us or three actually, you can send us an inquiry. One through our Facebook page here, just with a Facebook message. Another, and when I mean message, I mean at the inbox, not as, oh gosh, that was rude, wasn't it? Oh, sorry. As a message as opposed to a comment, because I don't always get to see the comments, but I do get the messages. They get sent to me, so I get those, and I also clear the one left most of the time on the website, which if you do your inquiry through the website, or you can email info@skeins.com, and depending on who's on deck that day, Claire and I do those. She does them mostly, so that's how I separated. And if I don't know something, I will flick it to her, and if she doesn't know something, she flicks it to me. So it's pretty straightforward. But one of the things that I have been getting is a number of inquiries around needles, because a lot of people are picking up knitting or picking up projects for the first time in a really long time, and it's always easy to assume that everybody's working on the same sorts of needles, the same sorts of things that you're doing. And I just thought I'd dig out and show you my needle stash, because I'm the world's biggest needle whore. I have so many needles, and if you're one of those people that is at home and you've got like a bag or an old needle case and it's groaning and you are thinking, oh, this is so awful and really bad, no, you're not alone. I have so many, and I thought I'd go through with you what I use different things for, why I have so many, and actually showing you that needles are tools. They're tools of your knitting trade, and it's actually often, like any trade, finding the right tool for the job. So look at that, and I've actually cleaned this up. This is what sits, and as you can see, it's a whiskey container. This is what sits beside my chair in the living room, this one here. I do actually have a second one, and you're going to laugh because there is a theme there. Another whiskey container. This is the one that actually lives out here in the office. This one tends to be more strays, more single needle strays than the other one. And yeah, it's quite worky, that one. But I just have that one out in the office, and it's got a couple of really big Methuselahs in here that I use quite infrequently and not quite so much. And as you can see from this lovely little collection, let's take the drop spindle out, because there we go. Oh, look, and I've even got a little French knitting bee there as well. I've got quite the collection there, and I just wanted, and I do use, oh, look, there we go. Is that, oh no, that's not a stray. I do use a lot of these needles for various different projects all of the time. So the first thing I want to cover off is straights, because that's how most of us learn how to knit. I worked on straight needles exclusively for years. In fact, I never picked up and started using a circular needle until I actually started knitting when I moved here to Hawke's Bay. So I've only been working on circulars now for the last 15 years. So for me, that's actually a relatively new phenomenon. I've been exclusively on straights until then. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, straight needles is what most of us learned on. Straight needles are perfect because your work is often worked in pieces. I hadn't moved to working into the round because at that stage I hadn't realised what was available with circular needles, and you could only really work PPNs, double pointed needles, and I found them very fumbly and fiddly, and they kind of drove me crazy. So I left them alone for a long, long time. And I actually still have a real nostalgic fondness for straight needles. I still use straight needles in certain projects. And I thought I would actually go through, because I know a number of you guys will have these in your collection, and I'll show you some of the ones that I'm especially fond of. So I have a mixture of everything. Most people, when they learn to knit, will end up with something like these, which are your basic bamboos. We've sold these in at the store, actually. In fact, we've got some hardened wooden ones at the moment. They are inexpensive, they're nice and light, they're generally quite smooth, and for a beginner, a basic bamboo needle is a really good place to be and go. And it's from a cost perspective, it's really good. I have to say, I am notorious for going to op shops and charity stores. I'm going to pull all of these out to show you because they're all hidden in here in varying lengths. For me, and there's a whole load of different materials that needles are made from. For me, it's actually often about the tip. I like a nice pointy tip. Not everybody does. Some people prefer a blunter tip. I personally prefer something quite pointed. In terms of straights, my number one absolute favourite, and you're a metal, so I'm just going to pull you there, are these guys here. And I am sure, and actually I've got a yellow one there too, because they come in yellow as well. Oh, there's another. Those are my faves. And I've photographed those ones so many times. These are, I know they come in yellow. There's a yellow one. Have I got a yellow one hidden there? No. Anyway. These are Bakelite needles, which are no longer available. You will often find them in your op shop. They were made by Inox, predominantly Inox, or these ones are JMBRA. But Inox are my absolute faves if I can find them. So if you're going around op shops and you come across these, I love them. I love them because they're quite durable. The points are fantastic, and even if these have been the most loved needles in the world and they found their way to a charity shop because generally, someone's passed or they're doing a clean up or they can't knit anymore, and the tips on these remain, as you can see, really fresh and they're indestructible. They're really quite wonderful. I adore them. If I need to swatch anything, if I'm swatching on straight needles, these are the needles that I will use. I will find I'll get them. I just love them. I absolutely adore them. So whenever I go anywhere and I'm in a charity store and I come across these, I can't help myself. I buy them. I give them away a lot. I'm teaching people how to knit because I just find, again, for beginners, these are wonderful. But I absolutely adore them. I now feel like I'm letting the cat out of the bag because I can now see you all running to charity stores and buying up my supply Inox needles. But if you do, I just think these really are truly wonderful. I also love them as well because I obviously I'd have to take photographs of work, and I like the colours of them, and from an editorial point of view, they also photograph really well. So those are my faves when it comes to straight needles. I'll say I've got oodles of them. But if I can't get those Bakelites, I do also like the metals. And Inox, oh look, there's another Bakelite one there. Inox also them in metals, and these are what are common when you go to an op shop. Standard metal, they've been powder coated, smooth painted and powder coated. Again, they generally have good tips on them. We have done these they've done these, and quite often too, you find them not with a millimetre measurement on them, but a good old-fashioned UK number system, as opposed to millimetres. Whereas, see, that one there is a millimetered one. I also find fantastic, and what I love about these, again, if you can particularly if they're in good condition, they're nice and straight. Again, great for beginners, and nice with this powder coated smooth painted finish. The yarn sits on them, and there's a sort of slight grip with the yarn, but they're still very smooth. And these are great for beginners, I find these are very good because, again, the tips are good. It's easy for them to get where they need to be, moving through loops when they're learning. And these will, you can generally pick these up for anywhere 20 cents a pair. So I will often, particularly in the popular sizes, anything from 3 1/4 through to 5mm, I will pick these up if I see them in good, and I use them for learning. And if I'm doing classes or showing people, because then I can get them cast on and started with something, and then they can take the needles away. And I mean, it's only cost me 20 cents or 50 cents, and I'd much rather them have something that they can keep working on than worry about purchasing a pair, investing in something a little bit more expensive. So in terms of straights, those are sort of those are really good for beginners, really accessible. Straights then also too can hair off in a whole bunch of different directions. You've got rose straights. Those are some rosewoods. Absolutely beautiful to work with, beautiful smooth. And as you can see, I mean, they're beautiful. Are they not beautiful? These are definitely more expensive, but absolutely gorgeous. These are birchwood. These are the other ones that are actually quite popular with wooden needles. Now, as you may have noticed, these are both sizes. And they're both very light. And I find that two reasons. One, you just can't find, you find these in the smaller sizes. I've never found these anything beyond, I think, a 5mm is the biggest I've ever found in a Bakelite. I find these wooden needles are what you find in the larger sizes more. And they're light, especially these birchwoods. They're incredibly light. So whenever I'm doing projects with, these are birchwoods, if I'm doing anything in straight and I need thicker or wider dimensions, I find these birchwoods really, really good. They've got a softer tip than a normal, but actually, as far as wooden tips go, they're not bad. As you can see, those tips there aren't too bad either. So those are very, very nice. And then you can start getting into what I call vampire stake territory, which are these. We've had these in at the shop. These are Serena wood needles. We've actually had these made specially. We got these made specially for us in India, at a cooperative in India. They're lovely to work with. You also can get them plastic as well. Personally, I prefer wooden. Once we start getting into bigger territory, I just like the idea that these are multi-purpose. I can stake a vampire and do my knitting at the same time. So those are sort of the breadth of what you can get in terms of straight needles. Actually, I'll put those over in that one there. What do you use them for? What can you use? Oh, you mean you can use straight needles for anything? I mean, anything that's worked in the flat can be worked generally at needle. But you can also do a lot of projects that are, more modern projects that people don't necessarily consider using straight needles for. And I've just gone and pulled out a couple of my projects, which actually I did do on straight needles, just to show that they can be done. And these are actually very modern current projects. That's the first one, the Army shawl. I've shown this to you many times before. This, I knitted this on a set of these, I think I did this on a 5mm, so I did this on a inox, just like that. Knitted this on a straight needle. Because you're never working on more than 36 stitches at a time. Even this I-cord bind off that I did at the end, I still did. In fact, the I-cord bind off that I did at the end, I actually did it on a smaller DPN, to be quite honest with you, because it was easier for me to work at smaller DPN. But you just don't do, it's just such an easy thing to do with straight needle. And I just found it really simple, really enjoyable, because you're working modular as you go and you can pick it up. So if you've been hankering to do a shawl project, you see, everyone wearing these shawls, you just don't, you can't fathom using a circular needle. You've tried and you just straight to your jam, that's what you feel comfortable with. This shawl is perfect for you. It allows you to knit a really beautiful modern shawl. You can upsize it. She's written, Olga Bahrain Khalifian, who wrote this pattern. I'll put the link in the comments for you later. She wrote this using a 3mm needle and a 4-ply, a fine one. And I have actually knitted this using that tension, and in fact I used this yarn here, which was Silver Lining Lumia. gorgeous, gives you a lovely small shawlette. As you can see, this is not that this is huge. Well, this is using DK yarn, and I used a 5mm needle because it's on garter stitch, so you can get away with something a little bit bigger. Well, that's really, really accessible. So it's a pattern that you as long as you alter your needle size to fit with your yarn, you've got a little bit of added latitude there, you can actually do anything. This pattern's wonderful for using up scraps. As you can see, I just used up 3 different colours that sort of spoke to each other there. But you can do anything. You can make this like dragon scales. You can have patchwork look, random patchwork look, and do something completely different. But the beauty of it is you can do the entire thing on straight. So if you're only a straight needle knitter, you can have a really fun modern pattern and know that you can get it completed. The other pattern, actually, when I was looking for that one, I realised I also knitted this one on straights, and it was because I knitted this when I was travelling, and straight needles was all I could get at the time. There wasn't a yarn shop where I was staying. There was actually, funnily enough, I had the yarn, hadn't packed the needles. There was only an op shop, so I actually went to the op shop and picked up a set of needles. This is Lefty by Martina Beam. Now, usually, again, she has knitted, I think I've shown the original in this I did in White Gum Wool, which again I written it on the pattern, which I think was a 3mm needle or 3.25 yarn. This is a DK yarn, and I used a 4.5mm needle. That's all I could get at the time, and I knitted this completely on a straight. And as you can see, and actually I'll put that on because it'll go really nicely with what I've got on. Let's take that off. There we go. It's cut just fine. Now look, she was starting to get I mean, that's the beginning edge there. By the time I got down to here, I mean, things were starting to get up on the needles, but it certainly wasn't a chore, and as you can see, makes a really lovely scarf and shawl. So those are the afraid that when you see instruction on out there and they talk about a circular, and particularly in shawls like this, the reason they do that is because of the number of stitches that you will often end up with at the end, and sometimes that can be very, very crowded on a straight needle. But have a look at that. You actually, if you're able to get hold of the pattern, or someone that's got it before you purchase it yourself, check, or even email the designer through, just check what the finished number of stitches is, max number of stitches will be at any given time in that pattern, and that will soon tell you whether or not you can work it on straights or not. I mean, you can fit on a good, you can get a couple of hundred stitches on a straight needle in a full ply without, she's crowded. There's no social distancing going on there, but it can. So those are just a couple of ideas that if you are a straight needle knitter out there, there is hope. Right, I'm just going to quickly jump down here and check for any questions, just in case any of you guys have got any burning questions at all. Launch into circulars. Oh, really? Thank you. There we go, guard dog. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. All right. I know everyone's. It sounds like it's rubbish everywhere else. Thank you, Renly. Oh, yeah, Pauline's asking, I love plastic needles, but the tips wear out. What's a good brand that won't wear out? If you're not wanting tips to wear out, I mean, metals are probably where you need to go. It's really difficult to get straight needles now. It really is. I mean, we've only got woodens in at the minute, but you can get, I do Knit Pro do straight needles, and they do them in the SE collection, and they've actually got a really nice tip on them. In terms of plastics, they do it. I think they have had the trends, but we're actually starting to move away from them a bit, just because these are fantastic, but you just can't get them. I know there are casein needles around as well. They were quite strong too, but again, they've fallen out of favour. About the only plastic needles that you can get are probably those pony plastics which you've been using, and then you will find that you'll get So unless someone else knows an alternative, to do let us know in here, because it is one of those things that is more and more difficult to find. Oh, that's really interesting. Daryl is saying that Hohilocatelli was straight. See, I didn't realise that. Oh, very interesting. Right, circulars. Let's hit circulars. So when I finally went to Circular Land, my very first set of circulars, and I think this might even be them here, was these. I was very fortunate, and actually, I can tell you, it was Peter Chatterton that gave them to me. He'd given a sample by the distributor of Addies for New Zealand. I mean, I'm talking this 15 years ago. I'd gone in to see them about doing some design work. I'd already been doing a few bits and pieces, and I was in seeing Peter. At this stage, I was very much a contractor because my children were. In fact, I think I was pregnant with. Just had Louis, so maybe 14 years ago. And anyway, I was in seeing Peter about some design work, and he'd been given some of these fixed Addies by the then distributor, and he said, "Oh, have you ever knitted with these?" And I said, "No, I haven't." "You want to give them a go?" he says. And so he gave them to me. And I thought, okay, I need to get over my big bad self and give these a go, because up until that point, I was strictly a very straight girl. There was no bendy in me back in those days. And this was the very first pair that I had, 4mm Addie fixed turbos. And my love with Addie, I have to say, has remained until this day. It's probably the one of all the circulars that I have. It's the one that I tend to go back to again and again. They are nickel shafts, very, very light, very smooth join through the cable. The cable does have a tendency to get a bit kinky, but nothing that a good steaming with the jug hasn't managed. So that was my very, very first pair. Now this is an 80cm pair, and if you've never worked with circulars before, 80cm is a good place to start, because with an 80cm circular you can actually quite easily magic loop. And magic looping is a technique whereby you shorten the loop on cable in order to reduce the circumference of your circular needle. Just YouTube magic looping, there is a million and one tutorials in there. But that's where this, if you're going to buy your very first needle, this is what I tend to recommend, because it gives you the option to magic loop. And it also, too, when you're wanting to do a first in the round project, I actually really recommend something like a cowl. In fact, something like what I'm wearing. My Ever After cowl is the perfect cowl, or even the Rib B cowl. In fact, the Rib cowl is even better that I have, is because it's very, very basic. Essentially, you're using a very basic tube, and you're just going around and around and around with a very straightforward stitch pattern, and it allows you a couple of things. One, to gather confidence of knitting in the round to begin with, and two, it's different. You're holding much smaller shafts in your hand. If you're a classic right-handed thrower like I am, or English method, it took me, it does feel quite different. You're holding a straight, which you get right through the hand, and you've got a feeling through this part of the hand. You don't actually get that quite so much with a circular. You don't feel anything there, and it can be sometimes feeling like you're driving without a seatbelt. It's different. If you're an under the arm knitter, circulars are really challenging, really, really challenging for those that method of knitter. But those two patterns are a really, really good place. One of the tips actually that I read, I think it was in a Nikki Epstein book, or blog years ago, is I did cowls, was what I started off, and I have to admit I had a few cowl disasters where I would cast on, get everything ready, and it's really difficult. You've got 180 odd stitches on one of these, and you're trying to line them all up so they don't twist, because you do not want to have those stitches twisted. You go to join your little circle to make the round, because if you do, what you end up with is a Mobius, which, to be fair, there are designs out there that get you to do that, to create a Mobius cowl, but most do not. And I had quite a few Mobius disasters, and there was nothing worse than casting on 180, 200, whatever stitches, thinking you've got them all lined up straight, only discover when you get 3 or 4 rounds or or even I think once I got about this far along and I realised that it was twisted. Because nothing you can do about it. You literally have to go back and completely unravel that and start again. So in this blog, the suggestion that was made was, and actually this is because I still do it to this day, and I did it with this here. What I do with now is that I actually cast on, and because if I got it, where was the cast on edge? That's the cast on edge. Yes, I cast on in a different colour. I will cast on, and so cast on, and whatever you're working on, whether it be ribbing or garter stitch, Nikki's advice was to actually work the first 2 rows or even up to the first 4 rows or rounds flat. So you do need to be mindful that when you're working garter stitch in the round, you are knitting one, purling the next round, knitting one round. So it's opposite to what you're doing working at. But by working those first 2 to 4 rows, and if it's garter stitch, I will do 4 rows flat, making sure that I've left a wee tail at the end. Then I join at the 5th row. That's the one that I will join in the round. Those stitches are then sitting on that cable nice and easily, and it's joining in the round at that point is easy peasy. And if you've left a tail, all you need to do is very carefully graft across a couple of garter row bumps or a mattress stitch, whatever in there. It's almost invisible, but it just means that you're not going to Mobius yourself, and it looks much easier. It just honestly, it makes your life a lot easier. And also too, those first few rounds for tensioning after you've cast on, often you find they're really pulled and stretched, or you particularly if you're having to magic loop right from the get-go, you are actually having to put a loop or a bubble through a couple of stitches, and when you're at those first few rows you can actually stretch them. I find working them flat then joining them in the round will then make that magic looping so much easier, because the stitches are relaxed on the needle where they should be, and you can just go on and continue working. So that was actually a tip that I found incredibly useful, as one I use to this day. So yeah, so you can get, these are Addy fixed, and loads will do fixed. These ones here are the pony fixed. They're very easy to get your hot little hands on. I mean, I've bags and bags and bags of these. What else you can even get? These are bamboo fixed. I think these might be ponies as well. I mean, there's heaps of them. That, you know, and these, oh, there we go. These are clover fixed. These are another bamboo needle. And you say to yourself, Maree, I have so many of these. This is insane. For me, a lot of these, I'll either, if I find them in good condition in op shops, I'll pick them up. Ones like this clover one, this will be a classic case in point. I've travelled a lot either in my private or business life. And so often I've come away with a project, I've got a project on the needles, will go somewhere and then realise I need to change the needle partway through the project. I've not the needle that I've needed, and I've actually had to go out and buy another needle. So I will often do that at charity stores, or if there's a yarn store, I will go in and get them. And quite often too, I don't then buy an interchangeable if I've got something on an interchangeable set. I will buy something like this one here. I know for a fact I purchased because I was wanting a project to knit on the plane. They've relaxed rules in knitting on aircraft. Back then they hadn't, and the tips, it wasn't allowed to be metal, and they couldn't be sharper than a ballpoint pen, which just ended up with those. So yeah, I have squillions and squillions of them. However, now interchangeables are all the rage, and interchangeables make perfect sense because interchangeables give you the ability to actually have a variety of cables and a variety of tips. Now, my first interchangeable experience, and let me put my inoxes away. Around. My first interchangeable experience, I think, is like a lot of you, was with Knit Picks. Was it Knit Pro? I can never remember. They're known as something else in the US. And for me, it was, come back here. because I was a metal girl, because I'd had my Eddies, I purchased nickel tipped, I can't even, Novas, these are called, from them, and they come, now mine are all purple, but they come in different colours now. They've colour coded their cables, which makes life accurate. You can tell how long I've had these because mine are all purple. And if you've got little girls with the little hair scrunchy things, they're so good. I don't have little girls, but I stole this from, well, I acquired this from my niece. So good at keeping things together. Oh look, and I've even got a little mini fix in there as well. They were the first ones that I'd ever purchased, and in fact that's what I'm knitting my Rambler on at the moment, and it's primarily because I'm 3.75 steel tipped in this and just the right size cable. These are great. They screw on. They're nice and sturdy. The nice thing about these is with these interchangeables is that the cables are universal across whatever tip you choose to use, which I really like from little locking mechanism in there. I won't lie to you, it doesn't matter. I don't know how everyone else finds this, but it doesn't matter how tight I put that locking mechanism. I do manage to start unscrewing these, so I do have to keep an eye on them coming loose. You generally can tell because the project will start snagging a bit on that as it starts coming loose. But it's no, they work really well. Sometimes these cables can come unfettered from this point here. I've had that happen, and I can tell you right now, a little drop of super glue fix that right up. It really does. But these are a really good starter interchangeable if you're wanting to try interchangeables out and you haven't tried them before. We do sell these cables on the website, and we have the Trends tips, which are the acrylics, but we've also started moving to these tips here, which are there's my tummy rumbling, the Symphony tips, the wooden tips, and we do have in the smaller, finer diameters, we have Novas where we can't get these wooden tips. These are a laminated wood, really lovely and smooth, nice and light, warm on the hands, and they work the same way. So I enjoy these. I actually use these primarily, to be honest with you. The main reason I use them is they have good selections of very large needles. So I showed you before where I've had straights, and I generally use the straights for the very wide diameter needles. I do have these interchangeables for them as well. I like these with the long cable if you're going to be working on really large sort of blankets or throws and you're not wanting to either be modular or seam, and I just find that that works particularly well. So that's what I can recommend for that. But there are so many out there, and I know a lot of you have your personal favourites. I will, oh no, let me pull out. I have a heap. Honestly, I have a heap. I have them in plastic. I have them in, I mean, look at this. It's embarrassing, look. I mean, I've got them everywhere. And I've got needle gauges everywhere too, because of course nothing's written on them, so you have to check with a needle gauge what size they are. This is another really good example of me having to buy them while I was away. That's another form of Knit Pro, and they're not called Knit Pro in the US. I think they're called Knitter's Pride or something. That is a beautiful laminated. It's not laminated, it's hardwood. It's stunning. I did a meow on that when I was away, and I broke the needle that I had, so I had to grab another. The other one I know and I've got two of these, and I can't find the second one. I think it might be sitting in a project bag over there. Chegu. I have got these from the lovely Nanette Yarns. I think, no, High. These are Highs. Yes, Highs. Sorry, Nanette. I love these, and in fact I bought two of these from her. These, I have to say, their join and their locking is actually more rigid than the Knit Pros. They are great, and they've got a nice point, and they are really smooth. I've enjoyed actually these. I've got a couple of pairs of those, and I know some of you have asked about interchangeable sets before. We have actually had the knit ones in, and we get those back in when they get in. But I do have a set of interchangeables. This is mine, Addy Clicks. So of course my first one was an Addy, so I tended my first needle. I bought this set in the US years ago, 2012, because at the time that I wanted to get it, the distributor didn't actually have any in stock, and they were going to have to order it in from overseas anyway. So I thought, oh well, I'm going overseas, so I may as well get it myself. Comes with a good selection of cables. It is a different locking mechanism to the other, and I have to say I like the locking mechanism. This is what drew me. Let's pull one out here, and they called Cleason, and it's because, and I'm not going to be able to do this. I don't have muscles on. There we go. There you go. They just literally, it's like a bayonet light bulb. They are fantastic. I have never had one of me ever. The joint is super smooth. They are also, and Ethan noticed this when I did my sleeves on my Rambler and these. The other reason I quite like them, I've got the short tips. Now, not everybody is working with short tips, and I have to say there are projects that I do. If I'm doing a long shore project, or a project where I'm not going to be requiring any small circumference work, these are not the first needles that I go for. I will actually go for a fixed circular every time with a long, I just will. So the normal length of shaft on an Addy is actually that, and as you see, these are much shorter. And where that is incredibly useful is in small circumference work, particularly sleeves, hats, gloves, anything like that. When you're wanting to magic loop or use one of the very short cables, and I mean these cables they start at 20 centimetre, so you've got very short tight cables. These short tips make the difference. And so on my sleeve with the Rambler, you probably noticed, and I know Ethan noticed it when I was doing the sleeves, I actually had that working in a small circumference. I used the smallest cable, and I just went around and around. There was no magic looping. It was really fast. And I have to say, this for me is where this kit comes into its own, and that's primarily what I use a lot of it for, is those sleeve points. And also too, this one goes from 3.25 up to a 8 millimeter. I don't have a lot of circular needles in those kind of weirder sort of 6.5 or 7 millimeter, those sorts of widths. So this is where the kit's great. The only needle I may have in those lesser used sizing in this kit. So it is a real go-to for me. And again, for travelling, I just find the kit great, because when I remember to pack it, I forget so often. I find it's great because everything is there. I've got all the sizes in there and multiple cables. So even if I've got one cable using for one, I can always use another cable for another. And it just is a really easy thing to have for travel. Knit Pro have a similar sort of system. Zip up. I mean, there's a whole. If you look online, there's a whole heap of interchangeable sets, and these sets I just do find travelers when they really do come into them. But if you're having to downsize and you can't have buckets and buckets, and then you're just needing to have a really tight firm set, I think that's where they really do work incredibly well. DPNs. I will cover off DPNs because I know there are some real DPN lovers out there. I will be honest with you, one of them. Yes, I do own DPNs. In fact, I purchased a full set of DPNs off a good friend a year or so ago. And did I put them in? Yes, I've just put one of them in here. The rest of the set. And they are, surprise, Addies. And I bought them because they're not really for socks, but I bought them because I love Addies, but longer DPNs. And these, if I'm not using, it's not always possible or the right thing to use that small kit on sleeves. I also find if I have to, sometimes these work really well for sleeves too. And I do actually work with this. The other ones that I got, and some of you may have had these because you would have gotten these, possibly we had these as a gift with purchase a while ago, and often really available, are these little guys here, bamboo DPNs. We've had them work on sale as well. I've got a number of these. I find these super handy if you're wanting to do something really, really small. So if you like knitting little dolls' clothes, or in fact, I used these just recently, finishing this off. They work really well for baby garments for really small circumferences like that. They're actually designed primarily for gloves, doing the fingers on gloves, but actually baby garments, and actually finish off with doing a sleeve in a very small circumference like that. Those little smaller bamboos are actually really useful, handy little thing to have. And of course, for sock knitters, I know sock knitters really, and I know if Dee's watching, she's a huge fan of really good quality DPMs for sock knitting, particularly the beautiful hardened wooden shafts and tips. And you know what, if you're a sock knitter, I have to say, I get it. I would truly get how that would work incredibly well for you. So as you can see, the huge number of needles out there, I will put my hand up and say our needle selection at Skeins is one of the things we need to work on. It's not the best that it could possibly be. We are trying to improve it. Part of the problem that we've had is actually finding distribution to actually get enough of them there to get it in stock all the time. That's the biggest issue that we've had. So it is one of our goals for 2020. So do bear with us. But as I said before, charity stores, when they're able to do it, that certainly is definitely a way to go for needles. There are other online sources and online stores, so don't be afraid to check those out and have a look at what you can get and can do. I've actually talked way longer than I was expecting to chat today. Oh gosh, there's me belly again. Well, I have weekends off. I'm sure we can manage with you for a day. Oh, Annie, you're so sweet. Yeah, if they extend level 3, I might. But I made a commitment that I would do these quarantine diaries daily through level 1, level 4 and level 3. So if we do maintain to the 2 weeks in level 3, then I will do that, and then I will probably go to bi-weekly after that. So that's the plan at this stage. If they extend, yeah, I might take Sundays off just to give myself a break. Now, one of the other things I did promise, there's 2 things I promised you for today, and one of them I completely forgot to do because I actually got answering inquiries before we went live, and it was drawing our Skeins easy prizes. I promise I am going to do that. I need to just sit down and run the random for both. That is definitely going to happen. Tomorrow on the Quarantine Diaries, I'm talking to Kurt Payne. I'm really looking forward to talking to Kurt. Kurt is he is crazy clever, talented. He does a lot of work. He's very, very active within Creative Fibre. He also does a lot of work within Guild, and he is one of the best known machine knitters that we have here in New Zealand. So we're going to cover all of those, and he's just crazy clever, and he's one of these people that is really actually got a huge amount of recognition, and locally I know amongst Creative Fibre people know Kurt really well. So I'm really excited to have him tomorrow. But recipe, someone reminded me this morning when I was answering that I haven't done. Kurt's waving. Hi, Kurt. Kurt's on tomorrow. I haven't done a recipe for ages, and this is actually one that I have come up with across the lockdown. It has received the seal of approval from my 2 sons, to the point that I've literally had to make this 3 days running because I make it and then they completely destroy it within a day. It is just a simple loaf, because we often, loaves are really comforting, eh? They're like scones, comforting. I was using a date. We've got a feijoa tree here, so I've been trying to get through all the feijoas from the section, and I've done some chutney and I've done a few other bits and pieces. Thank you, Barbara Quigley, for the chutney. But this loaf seems to be, this is the big winner with our kids, and I've done it straight feijoa, but I'm giving you this as feijoa and banana. You can just do it straight feijoa. Now, I actually made this up, and I've made it up on the base of a ratio measurement for baking that I learned years ago when I was up on the farm, and it was just some basic rules. Baking, I'm not a big baker, but one of the things that I learned, that baking actually is often based around certain ratios. So if you don't have an exact recipe and you're wanting to pull something together, if you work on a few basic ratio rules between dry ingredients, sweet ingredients, protein or fat ingredients, and oil ingredients, you can then pull together that you want. So this recipe has only been tested in my house probably for the last week to 10 days, and I don't know how it will actually last for, because it doesn't seem to last more than 24 to 36 hours in my house. But it's basically a loaf recipe, and it's using a lot of the principles that if you've made muffins that you would have with muffins. So this is what it is: 2 bowls, one for wet ingredients, for dry ingredients. I also find make your dry ingredient bowl your bigger bowl, because that's the one you'll use to combine at the end. So in your dry ingredients, this will fit a standard size loaf tin, and all I do to prep the tin is just put a bit of baking paper in it, and that's it. You can grease it, whatever, however you like to. You know your baking tins better than I do, but I just put a bit of baking paper in there. So ratio, 2 cups of flour to 1 cup of sugar. Now, if you were to upsize this, these are the ratios you work to: 2 to 1 flour to sugar. 2 to 1 flour to sugar. So in my case, 2 cups of flour, 1 cup of sugar. And then whatever, and then in teaspoons in the ratio, 1 teaspoon of baking soda. So I just do that dry and sift it through. And it's self-raising flour, people. I have actually written that down, SR flour. It's got to be flour. If you weren't using self-raising flour, I think from memory, it's 1.5 teaspoons. It might even be 2 teaspoons per cup. But I think you would probably need to do at least 3 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of baking soda. Okay, baking soda is in there because of the fruit, and a solid pinch of salt. Sift that, put that in one bowl. In your other bowl, grab an egg. I use a number 7 egg. Whisk that up, and you want to add your mashed fruit. So in my case, I've done, my boys like banana feijoa, so I have 1 mashed banana and about 6 to 8 mashed feijoas. So they're roughly about the same amount of feijoa to banana. If you're not using, you just want to use feijoa, so you're looking at around a dozen to 15 feijoas. So it's probably close to a cup's worth of mashed fruit pulp in there. I also, my boys like walnuts, so I often will add walnuts, around half a cup. You can either put those walnuts in with your dry ingredients or in with the wet, it doesn't matter. 75 grams of melted butter. Now this, in my case, the butter amount has varied depending, because I don't actually measure it. I just get the knife out and I chop it and I know to throw it in. Some days it's been 50 grams, days it's been 100 grams, but around 75 I think. That's the Goldilocks amount. Oh, thanks, but 1.5 teaspoons baking powder per cup of flour. I thought, thank you, I thought it was right. It's been a while. I will put just a little splash. It's probably the equivalent of half a tin of vanilla essence in. And then milk. I got here 3/4 of a cup to a cup, because what is before I add the milk, I mix all those wet ingredients together, so they're all nice and homogenized. I make a well in the dry ingredients and I plop those wet ingredients in. Then get the milk. Start with 3/4 of a, and then just gently mix up. And if you find that it's a bit dry and a bit gritty, add a little bit more. But it depends very much on the wetness of your fruit. So feijoas have actually got a surprising amount of water in them. If they're very ripe, they're more watery than what they are if they're not so ripe. And it's the same with the bananas as well. So that's why that milk amount, it's a consistency thing. You want to have it sort of the consistency of a thick, like thickish porridge. And you don't want to overmix it too much. So you just want to give it a good mix so it's all well combined. And that kind of consistency. So as I said, I actually start with half a cup of milk and then go through, then a little bit more and a little bit more. And as I've said, depending, like yesterday, I actually had to add more milk because the banana I used very ripe at all, so it wasn't as wet as I would have liked it. Then I just fire that into a loaf container, into a preheated oven, 160 degree fan force, 180 standard. And I bake it, for my oven, it's 45 minutes, and then check it. So it's around that 40 to 50 minute mark, depending on your oven. And then, if I just check it, as long as it's come out clean, that's it, you're golden. I've even popped a few walnuts on the top look pretty. If you don't have walnuts, you don't need to use them. If I've used pecans, I didn't have walnuts one day. I threw pecans in. Almonds, blanched almonds would probably work quite well. Hazelnut or macadamias would be amazing if you've got macadamias. If you throw some white chocolate in there, throw some white chocolate in there. I mean, you can be as adventurous like with it, to be quite honest. But all I have to say is I've now made slow 5 times, and yesterday on a 14-year-old came downstairs. He didn't even hear the. He comes downstairs and he's like, "Have you been baking?" They hunt it out, I tell you. But that's an absolute winner. So that's my Fiji banana loaf. So enjoy that. Hopefully it works. It's been working in this house, so there you go. Am I going to actually type this out for you? No. I'm going to watch me back. Because that's the sort of person I am. Anyway, until then, I've talked an hour. I've talked an hour of me by myself. Too long. Too long. I will be back here tomorrow with Kurt. Looking forward to it. Till then, have a great rest of your weekend, and I will see you same time, same place tomorrow. Here with Skane.